If you're supporting a person who has mental health needs or other special needs, and they're between the ages of 5 and 19, don't overlook the very broad range of services that are available through the school system. They're free, they're offered from people who are highly trained and competent, and while there may occasionally be wait lists, those wait lists are not necessarily larger or harder to manage than the ones you might experience with a community practitioner. For example, you can access counseling services, and the counselor may work alone with your child or may be able to work in concert with other counselors from a community-based program and make a referral to such programs. As well, the school district will have educational psychologists on staff, and they can help with diagnosis and recommending other services. If a student is of First Nations background, here in Mission they can access the Sewalsa West program, which means our forefathers' teachings. It's a set of Aboriginal programs that is additional to the regular school programs that includes, amongst other things, First Nations liaison workers. Most of these workers have a social services and counseling background, and they're prepared to help students to address psychosocial issues, whether through talk therapies or activities, or working with teachers to help mold programs to better meet a student's needs. The other thing that you'll find with the First Nations support workers or liaison staff is that they'll work closely with the First Nations community and are often in the business of helping people from the community to come into the school and reach out to the students. And I've seen this be extremely powerful, where an elder comes in, teaches a traditional practice or traditional craft to a group of students, building their pride, but also giving them something they can do that is a therapeutic activity. So I'll put a link for Sewalsa West on the Moodle platform, and I'll encourage you to look that up as well. If you're not from Mission, take a look and see what's going on in your school district for First Nations schooling, because there's a very good chance that programs are offered where you live as well. We talked about the hospital homebound teacher previously, a teacher that goes out and works with individuals who are not able to get to school on their own, and sometimes helps to transition students into school. In Mission, we have a program called Transitions. Many of you will have alternative education programs in your school district, and it's really important for you to make sure that you take a look around and see what they offer. What grades do they access? For example, I know in Abbotsford they have a program for young mums. Here in Mission, the Transitions program is part of Riverside College, and it's open to students from grade 10 through to 12. The student can come in and learn a variety of academic subjects, as well as, believe it or not, they can access things like physical education and what we call transition planning. And many of the students who go through that program transition into the career training programs that are offered at Riverside College as well. Riverside College is a unique approach for many of the people in our community because it offers them an opportunity to access courses that are going to take them directly down a career path, such as trades courses or career courses in the area of psychosocial services, business, computers, just to name a few. So Riverside College is an opportunity for a student who's struggling in a typical school environment to have an alternative, and that can be a significant part of that student feeling like they fit in and finding a community that makes them feel socially valued. One of the reasons I enjoy working at Riverside College is that we use a teacher mentor or teacher advisor model, which means that not only am I a classroom teacher to the individuals I'm teaching, but I'm also a support person to them. And my students have access to me from 9 until 9, Monday through Friday, and 11 till 9, Saturdays and Sundays. And they often call me with questions that go beyond schoolwork type questions, so that I can either give them informal supports or refer them on to other supports in the community or within the school district. There are also a number of programs in our district called academies, and they exist in many other school districts as well. For example, here in Mission, we have an equestrian one, a hockey academy, and a business academy. So what are these? Well, these are pathways for students who have a particular interest. And what happens is their education is themed around areas that they find particularly engaging and interesting, or that they have a desire to pursue in their future. So they're still learning academically. They're learning math and language arts and social studies, but they're learning these things according to these themed activities. So again, it's a way of helping a student who might otherwise feel like they can't engage with the school system to be able to do that here. The school system works with the police department to administer the restorative justice program, which is called Missions Restorative Resolutions. We've spoken about it a bit earlier. This is a program that any person in our community can utilize to help resolve an ongoing conflict. Could be within your family, could be within a workplace, could be between neighbors, and it could be within a school system. It could be that an individual committed a crime or offense against you, and this is an alternative approach to dealing with that as opposed to them being penalized through the courts. But many people misunderstand what RJ does, or restorative justice does. It is not a way to get a person off the hook or to lighten their penalty. In fact, what it does is it helps people to come to a mutual understanding that resolves the conflict and often provides the people with an ongoing set of supports that they need. So if, for example, in our last slides where we were talking about landlords and tenants or neighbor to neighbor, we had an individual with a mental health need that wasn't getting along with others in their residential setting, or if we have parents who are having difficulty with their children, then restorative justice programs may be a valuable approach, and you can access those through the school district or through the Mission RCMP non-emergency line. The intensive support program is a program offered through the Heritage Park Secondary School, and it provides services to kids with developmental disabilities that are in the moderate, severe, and profound range. So these are kids who need a little bit more educational assistance on a day-to-day basis, and the emphasis here is on, and I've actually misspoken, it's called the Inclusive Support Program, and that's in fact what the emphasis is on including the person in the school and creating as many naturalized and meaningful relationships as possible. Again, with the idea being that that is setting a foundation for the individual later on in the community so that they are not isolated and more likely to experience mental health needs that go unchecked. Also at Heritage Park is a leadership and civics program, and what's interesting about this program is not only can it be useful for the students, but the program actually has students who are willing to go out and engage in community activities. So if you run a community program that needs people to volunteer for a day or for a period of time, then I would encourage you to contact Heritage Park Secondary and see whether or not there's a way to engage those students as volunteers in your event. Back to Riverside College for a moment, and want to talk about how that also is true of that college. Every class at Riverside College, every career program, has as part of its overall mandate a social responsibility component. And so, over the years, Riverside College has contributed a great deal to a variety of social service agencies, from raising money for programs like Haven in the Hollow, to building things like wheelchair ramps and specialized lifts, to putting in showers and so forth into homeless shelters so that people can access places to wash their clothing and get clean, to participating in Connect events, to doing administrative work for things like community volunteer days. So I strongly encourage you to utilize the programs at Riverside College if you are looking for a group that can help you around volunteering or contributing in kind. And remember that schools are available in the evenings and weekends as venues for community programs. They are often available at either no cost or very low cost to community programs that are looking for classrooms and gymnasiums or sports fields as a way of engaging people in the community. So if you're wanting to run something like a self-help group for youth with mental health needs, the school district is the place that you can think of as a possible venue. How do you effectively engage a school if you're supporting an individual with mental health needs? Well, one of the most important things is to begin before the crisis occurs. In Mission, the biggest employer is the Mission's public school district. In other words, it's a fairly large system, and like most large systems, it needs a little bit of time to adjust. You're better off when you know that you're having a person come into your care who has needs and will be in the school system, to engage the school system as early as you can. And that means in the pre-summer months if a person is beginning in that school in the fall. So especially important during times when there is transition between elementary school to middle school or middle school into high school. it's important for us to make sure that we are not losing the collective knowledge and the approaches that we have learned to take with the student as they go through those transitions. Make sure that if you've moved to the community that you go and speak to the school early on and establish relationships with the people who are administering that school, who are providing support services, or who are the direct teachers for your child or the person you're providing care to. Schools are not all the same, and people often think that all school districts work the same way and that every school within a school district works the same way. And it is simply not true. They're as different as one restaurant to another. And it really pays to get to know the school and the staff and the culture that is there. Sometimes within a school district, a great deal of change can happen from one year to the next, particularly when the school has a number of lower seniority staff working there. They can be transferred or changed from one grade to another quite regularly in the first 2 to 4 years of their teaching careers. And so it's important to go in and get to know more than just one professional in case that individual moves on. Get to know people, not just the office. So speak to people at a variety of different levels, not just in administration, and get to know the educational assistant and learning assistance teachers as much as you're getting to know the classroom teacher. If your student has an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, make sure that you are familiar with it and that it is shared and talked about frequently within the circle of support that is working with that student. Within a community-based program, such as community living homes, all work that is done is connected back to a person's annual plan. Every single day, activities are planned that are designed to help a person achieve their goals, and at the end of the day, records are kept asking how far that person moved towards their goals that day. However, in schools, I've seen a very wide range of approaches in dealing with IEPs. Some are very conscious of what the IEP says and incorporate it into everything, while in others, the IEP is put into a file and not seen for many months. And I have to say that that's an approach that leads to everybody being frustrated and often losing ground. So, if the person has an IEP, make sure that it is well understood, that it is distributed amongst all of the people in that team, and that we're mindful of it as we plan on a day-to-day basis. And when it's time to write the IEP, ask to be able to contribute, whether you are the community provider, whether you're the family, whether or not you're the educational assistant. Ask whether or not you can provide either a written submission or participate in person at that meeting. My experience is that schools are normally quite willing to allow individuals to do that as long as it's okay with the family and the child. And remember the power of school-based teams. Even if the child that you're supporting doesn't have one of the specific designations recognized by the Ministry of Education for additional supports, even if what their needs are cannot easily be labeled, a school-based team involving the principal, the classroom teacher, learning assistance teacher, perhaps a counselor or educational assistant can be convened, even if it's on a short-term basis, to think and work together on addressing that student's needs. Often the supports that are needed are very informal, things like checking in with the student multiple times over the course of a week, having the student go and spend time with a particular staff person they feel more comfortable with, having the student visit a peer tutor or peer counselor, or becoming involved with a sports team or arts organization after school. All of these are simple ways that we can help a student sometimes feel more included, and we can do a better job of monitoring them. Some of the school-based resources that you may not think about are the principal. Now, the principal may or may not have intimate knowledge of your student, so you want to make sure that you are keeping that principal apprised of what's going on. The school psychologist, as we said, largely plays a role in diagnosing an individual, but also can play a key role in determining what goes into the person's individualized educational plan. The school counselor may also play a lead role in developing the IEP or monitoring that the IEP is being followed. The school counselor may help in the enrollment process and may be involved in helping that student to pick the right courses and activities, and may even have ideas about connecting that student socially with other students or staff. And there are obviously counseling roles for those people as well, and they may be able to either directly offer therapeutic counseling or help by referring the individual to a community-based therapeutic counselor who can see that person on a regular basis and get to work with them more intensively. The learning assistance or alternative education teacher, also sometimes called a resource teacher, will often have knowledge, media, assistance, technology, and educational assistance who can help that student with learning disabilities or other developmental needs to be able to catch up or work more concurrently with other students. They may also have ideas around behavioral change and supporting individuals with challenging behavior. In many alternative education programs, there may be a youth worker. Youth workers are particularly experienced at addressing conduct and emotional issues with young people, particularly teenagers, and they're often able to deal with the larger psychosocial issues that a person may have. So they play a pseudo-counseling role, but also a life skills teaching and behavior management role in supporting a person who, for example, may have an unstable home, maybe have been exposed to drugs or criminal activity, or a variety of other psychosocial issues. So a youth worker can be a valuable assistant working alongside of all of these other professionals. An Aboriginal liaison, as we've spoken to earlier, is a connection to First Nations resources, both in the school district and outside. So the First Nations worker may be a counselor or able to do some talk and listening therapies, but they also may be able to connect that person to things like elders in the community or cultural programs that are being offered within the local band services. They may also be able to actually bring elders or others into the school to lead discussions and group activities, participate in field trips and so forth, and build connections between Aboriginal students that will help them to overcome social barriers such as shyness or prejudice. The classroom teacher, him or herself, is a valuable resource, but realize that many classroom teachers have had very limited amounts of training in mental health or developmental disabilities. It is not something that is emphasized in most of our training. So, if you're an expert in the support needs of your child or of the person that you're advocating for, expressing that information, sharing that information, and being willing to collaborate with the classroom teacher to help ensure that you have the most comprehensive and effective approach is very valuable. Teachers are versed in delivering curriculum, managing classrooms, assessing students, just to name a few of the things that they're there to do. They are not incompetent because they don't know intimately how to deal with a child who has a mental health need. That's a particular area of expertise. But what a teacher does know can jibe very well with the work of a family or a psychosocial rehabilitation practitioner who can come in and share notes and come up with approaches that work well for both the teacher and the community professional. And we've talked about that school-based team already, so I won't go on about it. It's not universal, but you can certainly ask that it take place, and first responders can contribute. They can ask to participate or to share information with that school-based team. There is lots of interaction between schools and people who work in community professions, and there should be more. Ministry for Children and Families social workers, particularly those who are responsible for students who are either going through potential abuse and neglect investigations, or where there's some remedies being put in place because there are issues around abuse and neglect in a home, or where there are independent living or youth agreements. Again, the social worker plays a valuable role and may be the most reliable contact between the school and the individual. There may be foster parents and group homes providing services to students, and it's very important for them to be connected. Here in Mission, Fraser House provides outpatient counseling for people with drug and alcohol issues, including youth counseling. And so they have a worker who will actually come out and meet students within the school. And if you're not seeing that as a service that you can take advantage of, make sure you connect up with the school advisor or counselor and find out how to make that connection. Community psychologists and behavioral consultants may also exist. Sometimes families prefer not to utilize the educational psychologists or behavioral consultants that are within the district, and so they access people who are in the community. And we need to make sure that if we are the community providers, and I am one, that we connect up with the students teaching and professional staff. And my experience has been that they're very, very well willing to have those conversations as long as they know the individual and their family are okay with it. And if you are on the school side of the equation, ask the family, ask the consumer if there are others in the community that are providing service, and see if you can initiate that contact. And as we've said, within the First Nations community, we can make a lot of connections, both with professionals and with non-professionals, but people who are often leaders or elders in that community. And the First Nations liaison worker within our school district is not just a conduit between kids and these resources, but also between the staff and these resources. And I strongly encourage us to have, as often as we possibly can, those connections made.